family home. It may not be a $2.5 million home like yours, but that sounds like a lot of red tape to me.
Excuse me.
Do you disagree?
I really take that as a personal
do you
assumption.
disagree?
My home.
Do you disagree that this was an overreach?
I disagree that
Ms.
you're
Katzen, my time
casting
has expired.
aspersions on
Mr. Chairman, I
me
yield.
or my.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is where we're going to start,
for.
Ms.
So let me
Katzen.
do what she would never do, which is to be an adult in this room or in this chamber. So let me start there. I'm also going to start with some nonsense that she was trying to spew. And unlike Ms. Boebert, I am legally trained, and I've passed a few bar exams. And I also legislated before I got here. So I do want to start with correcting the record a little bit. And if you want to add to that, please do.
When a black woman tells the truth in Congress, the entire right-wing outrage machine melts down. Every single time. And today, Jasmine Crockett didn't just push back. She dragged an entire ecosystem of manufactured ignorance into the sunlight. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to True Liberty. Listen, what I just watched was one of those moments that makes you sit up straight, pause your day, and say, oh, this is why they fear her. Because today's clip isn't just a heated moment in a hearing. It's not just another episode of Republicans pretend regulation is tyranny. No, this is a masterclass in what happens when someone refuses to let performative outrage, phony talking points, and corporate scripted anti-regulation propaganda go unchallenged.
This is recognized for 5 minutes.
This committee runs my pressure up. And I do come prepared to committee, and then there's always somebody from this side that does something ridiculous that throws me all the way off. So, oh, Jesus. Okay, so this is where we're going to start, Ms. Kaskin. First of all, let me apologize because that was uncalled for. So let me do what she would never do, which is to be an adult in this room or in this chamber. So let me start there. I'm also going to start with some nonsense that she was trying to spew, and unlike Ms. Boebert, I am legally trained. And I've passed a few bar exams, and I also legislated before I got here. So I do want to start with correcting the record a little bit, and if you want to add to that, please do. There was conversation about ATF, because my colleagues love to talk about their guns, baby. And I'm from Texas, so let me be clear. I also own firearms. Let me scream. Democrats own guns too. Let me make it clear. I own guns and I'm licensed to carry. That is a regulation. Regulations aren't necessarily bad. It didn't stop me from being able to get a gun. So we were talking about, or y'all were talking about the ATF, which I wasn't going there. I didn't plan to go there. But you know what? I honestly wish the ATF would run amok, because we know that seemingly the people that run this chamber don't have the courage to come up with one of the things we've heard is common sense regulations when it comes to guns. And to be clear, our Constitution, the Second Amendment, anticipates people having common sense. Unfortunately, we have not done that, and unfortunately, it has cost us lives. So when you were testifying a little bit earlier, you talked about unintended consequences and the fact that we are supposed to be able to anticipate that as lawmakers when we are writing laws. Unfortunately, not only have we ignored the unintended consequences, but we've got foreseeable consequences that are continually ignored. And that is why we are talking about regulation, at least on this side of the aisle. And our definition of common sense is one that doesn't keep us in the pockets of corporations, but keeps us in the pockets of the people. Because what I'm trying to do is save lives. My job isn't here to make sure that I'm pushing the bottom line for some corporation, but it's to make sure that the people that put me into this seat, which were actual people, individuals, to make sure that I can save lives. So let's talk about my state, because we always got good stuff coming out of Texas. Unfortunately, my state decided that it didn't want to be a part of the overall national grid, because my state did not want to deal with all of the...
We're talking cognitive dissonance on full display. We're talking a lawmaker who actually understands policy and has the courage to call out a broken system built around protecting corporate profits instead of human lives. By the way, if you like content that cuts through the noise and tells the truth without apology, stick around with me. I'd love to keep having these conversations with you, because here's the real story. This wasn't just Jasmine Crockett defending a witness. This was Jasmine exposing the entire conservative strategy: distract, distort, deny, and then blame regulation for problems caused by the lack of regulation. And she did it while staying sharper, calmer, and more grounded than the folks trying to derail the conversation with nonsense.
State did not want to deal with all of the quote-unquote red tape. The cost of that was lives. So we had this winter storm, and here it was, I was freshly being sworn into the Texas House, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do because I started getting calls because there is this thing called climate change. Hello, nobody's in the chamber on the other side. But climate change is this real thing. And so in Texas, we had this terrible storm that took place. And even though we are an energy capital, not just in this country, but in the world, for clean and dirty energy, unfortunately, we couldn't keep our own lights on. And it was all because they wanted to avoid red tape. You know what the cost of that was? It was human lives. And I think that that's what's being lost. You know what happened in Palestine or East Palestine? The cost was human lives. Unfortunately, seemingly, some people don't want to consider human lives as an actual cost. The only cost that they ever talk about is dollars. Well, let me be clear. I'm not here because of corporate dollars. I'm here because of people. And so I am curious to know, and I'm going to give you, and I usually run out of time. I'm going to be clear. I always run out of time because they always give me too much to do. But because of the way that you were treated, I am going to allow you the courtesy of expounding upon what it was that you were talking about with these agencies, which is pretty much what I understood, which is they only did what they were delegated to do, because if ATF could do more, I'm sure that we would actually get rid of the assault rifles that are constantly killing our babies every single day in this country. But go ahead, Ms. Castian, with the last 20 seconds.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I thank you for them. And I don't disagree with anything that you said about the situation in Texas, where they declined to be part of the national pool and then suffered the consequences, which were real. And what I was trying to say earlier was that what the ATF has been doing is consistent with the authority that they had been granted by Congress, and to the extent they exceeded that authority in any way, this is the most litigious country in the world. Someone will take them to court, and if they really did the wrong thing, if they didn't stay within the constraints, the courts will so determine. I have complete confidence in that. But thank you again for your comments, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'll yield.
Let's break this down. The moment Crockett apologizes to the witness because someone else won't, that right there, that's your entire ideological divide in one sentence. Conservatives preach personal responsibility, but when they disrespect a witness, misstate the law, or devolve into culture war rambling, suddenly accountability vanishes. Meanwhile, the one person they love to demonize is the only adult in the room. And then we get to the gun debate. The right loves to push this cartoon version of Democrats. Liberals hate guns. Liberals want to ban everything. Liberals want to confiscate your freedoms. But Crockett, from Texas, mind you, immediately shreds that narrative. Democrats own guns too. And not just own them, she's trained, licensed, and understands the law better than half the committee. The right's entire fear-based framing collapses in a single sentence. Because their argument needs Democrats to be caricatures. She won't let them. Then Crockett turns to the ATF, and this is where the conservative script really falls apart. Republicans push this myth that agencies run amok. But in reality, ATF acts within the authority Congress gave them. If they ever overstep, the courts check them. That's how the system works. The witness even confirms this clearly, because it's true. But conservatives don't want truth. They want theater. They want outrage. They want to score Fox News clips. Crockett brings it home with the Texas power grid. And this is where ideology becomes deadly. Texas avoided federal safety standards because regulation bad. Result? Hundreds of people died when the grid collapsed during a freeze. This is the cost of deregulation. This is what corporate power looks like when it's unchecked. This is what happens when the right prioritizes profit over human life. And just like East Palestine, the story is always the same. Corporate shortcuts, ignored warnings, community devastation, political gaslighting. This is America's pattern, not an accident, not a coincidence. A model built and defended by the people who scream the loudest about freedom while stripping it away from everyday folks. Crockett's core message: government exists to protect people, not corporations. Civil liberties mean nothing if people don't have electricity, clean water, safe transportation, or functioning infrastructure. You can't scream constitutional rights while letting companies profit from cutting corners and putting the public at risk. Economic justice is public safety. Environmental protection is national security. Regulation is freedom. Freedom from being poisoned, scammed, exploited, or left to die. And Crockett said it out loud in a room full of people who'd rather pretend climate change doesn't exist. But the most powerful moment? Giving her time back to the witness. Because after being talked down to and interrupted by conservative members, this witness finally gets to speak without hostility. Crockett didn't just defend a person.
Would never do,
she defended
which
the
is to be an
democratic
adult
process.
in this room,
and that
or
is
in
what
this
true
chamber.
liberty actually
So let me
looks
start
like.
there. I'm
Not
also going to
slogans,
start with
not
some
fear,
nonsense that
not
she was
corporate
trying to
obedience,
spew, and unlike Ms. Boebert,
but
I am
truth,
legally trained.
humanity, accountability,
and I passed a few
and
bar
courage.
exams. And
If
I
you were
also
watching this
legislated
and
before
thinking,
I got here. So
yeah,
I do want
this
to
is the
start
kind of
with,
analysis I want more
correcting
of.
the record a little
Stick
bit. And
around.
if you want to add to that,
I'd love
please
to have
do.
you here next time.
There was
Because
conversation
the
about
more
ATF
we cut through the
because
noise together,
my colleagues love to talk
the
about
harder
their
it
guns,
becomes
baby.
for those in
And
power
I'm
to
from
hide
Texas.
behind it.
So let me be clear.
See
I
you in the
also
next
own
one.
firearms.